Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the 51st episode of Visioncon Live, your go-to nerdy talk show. I'm your host, Zach Wilson. But you didn't come here to see me today. You came to meet the woman of the hour. She's Eris Morn from the Destiny franchise, Light Hope from She-Ra, everyone from Moss, just to name a few. She's the radiant legend whose skill level knows no limits. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome the one, the only, Morla Gorrondona. Morla, how are we doing today?
Oh my goodness, what a lovely introduction. My goodness, thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here.
Well, it fits the guest, and I mean, honestly, I do want to get one thing out of the way real quick. It is great talking to you again, Morla, because this is about the third or so time we've actually done the interview, which I gotta be honest, guys, and if any of the guests that are upcoming are watching this, or another celebrity guest may be like, hey, maybe I want to be on the show, I am totally for you guys maybe video chatting me beforehand, because I appreciate the trust you guys are putting with me, but I could be anyone. like I don't know, it's just something I've always thought was weird.
Well, I just like to have pre-meetings, one, just to kind of get an idea of your vibe and our rapport so I can prepare for it. And then I like to have a separate kind of technical meeting just to make sure like everything's like I didn't forget to like plug in my microphone or something of the sort. And I having run my own podcast, like if it just feels like why just give yourself the comfort of doing it ahead of time. And it was nice. I got to see you 3 times. It's really
Oh my God. Yeah. I mean, yeah, my cup runneth over for sure. All right. Now, guys, before we get started, I have a special announcement today, guys, because this week's episode of Visioncon Live is brought to you by the Haupt Network. The Haupt Network helps talented freelancers, professionals, and small businesses get in contact with content creators that they're looking for. They also provide classes, webinars covering a variety of fields in the entertainment industry, suited for both novices and professionals wanting to enhance their craft. From actors to film editors to even motion capture stages, the Haupt Network is here to help you get connected. Visit them online at www.hauptnet.com to see how you can improve your life with their Haupt. Thank you guys so much for tuning in, and thank you so much to Haupt Network for sponsoring this video.
They really are wonderful. I've worked with them a number of times. I've known the folks over at Haupt for a long time. Chip Beeman is one of the first people that I met in the industry, and Julia and Julian and Robert are all just incredibly lovely people. So
Robert,
I agree with that.
Robert, if you're watching this right now, you are the man. You are just so easy to work with and just such a sweet guy. And everybody at the Haupt Network is so amazing. And if you're watching this later on YouTube or listening to this later on Spotify, I got all the links to the Haupt Network down there in the description box below, guys. All right, well, to kick things off more, because we got a pretty stacked episode, I want to start us right off with, I named a bunch of characters already in the intro. That is just a taste of the plethora of characters that you have played throughout your career. But what I want to get to first is, how did we get here? Was showbiz kind of always the plan, or did something kind of happen later in life that brought you here?
Yeah, well, column A, column B, it's... yeah, I always wanted to be an actor. I did my first play in 2nd grade. I was Gretel in The Sound of Music. Oh. And I was like, oh, yeah, I want to do this. And then somewhere, like in college, I was hired for my first commercial. It was from the University of Mississippi Medical Center, and it was that was the first voiceover that I did. They wound up actually opting to go with Morgan Freeman instead of me, but I was like, I get it, so it's fine.
It's Morgan Freeman.
It's fine. It's fine. But the voice diction class was always my absolute favorite class in college, and then when I went to New York, I wound up just getting, I had a screen agent, and then I left a message for my screen agent on a voicemail. That's dating me. But the VO agent was like, she's a voice actor. And she just like took over took over me as her client. And so then I wound up going up for voiceover for like commercials and stuff like that. But my heart really wasn't in the commercials. Like, it was fun to do, but it wasn't really in that. And then I learned about games and BioShock. And I got to see BioShock being played, and it was just a really transformative experience for me. And the more I learned about games, VO for games, I realized it's really just, it's so much of everything that I love about theater without any of the limitations. And it's super exciting. So I just decided to do that. In fact, I said, if there is ever a sequel, I will be in the sequel. And I was.
Yeah. And all of this
Yeah.
after a voicemail too.
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, just like all these, life is so like this. And I'm sure, everyone has a similar kind of like the looking back over the tiny little series of events that just brought you to a place, like a destiny, an inevitability. And like, it was like, oh, it was always supposed to be VO. I just didn't know it yet.
Sure. Didn't quite click quite yet.
Yeah. And then I was like, oh, of course. It all led to this. So it's great.
Well, we got a bunch of characters that I kind of want to dissect real quick if we can. But before we start, guys, a lot of you have either already messaged Visioncon directly or put your live questions or comments in the live chat here on Facebook. You guys have plenty of time to do so. I just wanted to let you guys know that we're going to get to those at the end, so just stay tuned. But with that, guys, the first character I want to talk about is a character that a lot of people love, a little bit of a foreboding character, but a character whose design I am in love with, to the point that I was telling my best friends about interviewing you, and her dad was in the room, and he was actually playing this game, and when I said your name, he was like, what? And then he went to the planet where your character's on. He's like, that's her. That of course is the one, the only Eris Morn. Now, before we dissect, kind of get a little bit deeper with Eris, can you give us just a brief overview about the character, any fun anecdote, stories involved in getting the role, and anything else you can think of?
Oh man, yeah, Eris is, talk about like a series, like a lifetime of events leading up to, a lifetime of small events leading up to this. It is the number of happenstances that brought me to Eris are unfathomable. They're like too many to count. And it's like, if any one of them would have gone a different way, this just would not have happened. And I feel so fortunate to have been given the opportunity even to have auditioned for her, which I did. I auditioned for her, and it was just, it felt like I feel like I got her immediately. So Eris Morn is a guardian who, her fire team, which is like her crew, they go to the moon to fight the hive, and everyone in her team dies except for her. And instead of leaving, she decides to stay and live amongst the hive. And so she is this, the way she was first described to me going into the audition is that we're really just not sure. We're not sure, is she good? Is she evil? She is, but more than that, does she even know? And she's on this precipice of madness, and she could go either way. And I was like, oh yeah, that sounds, I want to read for that. That sounds great. Like, I love that. I love the question marks of that. I love the not knowing. I love the shroud and the mystery and the not giving it all away of that. That is actually a theme throughout my work of like, I don't know, which way does she go? And an anecdote. Well, I will say that how I got into this role, and this has kind of become a great, fun story for fans of Destiny that maybe not everybody knows yet, is that I started in this role I was the voice of the Hive. I did the vocal sound design for the Hive, like the creatures, the screeches and the screams, and I was brought back, and there was like a sentiment of like, wouldn't it be very poetic that the person who voices Eris, who lived among the Hive, turns out to be the same person who actually voiced the Hive, and that's how it happened.
I'll throw you a fun anecdote right back, especially about the Hive. You actually are, what's the word I'm looking for? Guilty of making me break a controller. Because when I was playing Destiny 2 one night, this was, I feel like it had to have been at least a year. Maybe less, but I was playing in the dark like a fool, and I'm very easily scared. So I was playing, and then all of a sudden I hear this loud screech right in my ear, because again, I was playing with headphones like a fool. I throw my controller up in the air, it hits the ceiling. I see the divot right there. And the screen breaks, and sure enough, tomorrow or the day after, I buy another DualShock 4 controller.
Was that from the voice of Omnigul? Or was it just a Hive?
I believe it was the Omnigul, because I died soon after. But so, I'm
so honored that there's a hole in your ceiling because
it's right there. But getting back to Eris, though, Eris' story it's equal parts interesting and tragic. So kind of her whole story, it's kind of centered around guilt, survivor's guilt rather, tragedy, and kind of her quest to kind of find that revenge she's seeking for her fallen comrades. So while playing this character, was it ever difficult to kind of get into that dark headspace in order to give such a compelling and believable performance?
I definitely had a process for it, and I took it very seriously, which was appropriate, I think, for the character. And one of the things that really struck me about her journey, going to the moon, going into the pit, where she said, we went down into the pit. 6 of us went into the pit, and it very much reminded me of, as I said, I'm from New Orleans, and it reminded me of heading back to New Orleans after Katrina, and where it was this everybody else is going the opposite way, and I just had this sense of like we're going the wrong way, and we don't know what we're gonna find when we get there, and this unknown, like this going, it was like I identified with that. So I definitely had all my Katrina experiences very present, and I am no stranger to loss and death in my own life. So I feel like as a person, it's never really far beneath the surface for me anyway. That's not to say I'm not a joyful, happy, peaceful, well-adjusted individual, but it's there, and I have access to that. So I would think about these things, and I would listen to very specific music, and I would go to because I used to record at Bungie, and I would go to a certain kind of little corner of the garage and like be in like this darkness and just kind of get into the headspace of that. And I'm sure like I walked in and I was like, hello. I'm here. Let's just go right into it. Yeah, it was yeah, I think that answers the question.
Well, I mean, this might be a bit of an odd transition, but to address Jared, who just messaged Visioncon directly about the story I just told about my ceiling. Nah, Jared, my ceilings, I kind of have low bearing ceilings. I didn't just Tom Brady the controller. All right, but moving on to a
Yeah.
character that maybe didn't have quite as tragic of a backstory, but whose story definitely went more kind of on the tragic side, even though
Mm.
definitely started out as a more positive mentor-esque
Mhm.
role. That character, of course, is the legendary
Mm.
Light Hope. Now, kind of similar, before we take a deep dive, just give us a general overview about Light Hope, getting the part, and anything else.
Yeah, so Light Hope is what is called a first one's technology. She is an ancient technology uh, in the Shira universe, and when we meet her, she it becomes Shira's guide and mentor, giving her, letting her getting her aware of a very specific mission that she needs to go on, and she has to do this training to do it. Um, uh, while Shira is like, no, I see like injustices that need to be taken care of. I have to help my friends. We have to fix this. She's like tries to keep her on this very specific, very academic, one might say, path. Um, and for me, like the idea is she good or bad? Is she like good and then turns bad? But it's like, well, she actually, what was she all along? Because I mean, I don't want to like give anything away for anyone who hasn't watched it, but yeah, there are question marks about her and where she is and what her intents are. And for Shira, I remember when I got the audition, just I received the email like, here, Morla, audition for this. I cried because I love Shira so much. I grew up on Shira, and I remember Light Hope specifically. Light Hope was originally just like this beam of rainbow and sparkle kind of light, and was voiced by a male, and so it was a male voice. And so I was so just thrilled and excited that this show was coming around again, and that I even had a chance to voice this character. And I tell you, my video game knowledge definitely came in handy for this, because I went full GLaDOS on it. I was just like, I'm just
I
gonna
see it.
throw that at it and just see what happens. I can always like tune it, bear it back. But yeah, I went full GLaDOS. And yeah, some interesting one interesting kind of moment or fun little anecdote is that the uh like the bleed like the oh, what is it called, when she like skips, like her voice skips and stutters.
Oh, like the glitching?
Like the glitching, thank you. That's the word I was looking for. Glitching. The glitching. I did that myself.
Really? I always thought that was like some audio
I
trick.
love vocal sound design. I love just getting my voice to do impossible, crazy things. Like it's like, that's impossible. I'm gonna figure out how to do that. So yeah, I love that.
Well, with Light Hope's transition into kind of being like an old and like a mentor slash
Mhm.
role to Adora,
Mhm.
and a friend definitely. But then later on in the series, definitely
Mhm.
took a more spoiler alert. Now, guys, you have just a chance. If you watch this later on YouTube or Spotify, skip forward maybe about 5 or so minutes. But for anybody else, kind of towards the end of the show, at least to season 4, she definitely
Mhm.
took a more antagonistic role in the
Yes.
show. So with that large kind of development as Light Hope, were there any moments that kind of stuck with you, maybe more than others?
Well, I remember in one session in particular, I think Light Hope goes through a number of different transitions because she is getting rebooted over and over again. And so every time she gets rebooted, it's like a different kind of version of herself. So she's her original self, I think, then like the hologram self, which is like a more like more of a GLaDOS-y, like a more like the more computerized version of herself. And then there's all these different versions. And then it was like so exciting when then all of a sudden she takes this very dark turn and she goes like, oh no, not Light Hope. And I love that. And that was all done in one day. And it was so fun. It was so much fun. Yeah, that was a very powerful, fun kind of journey of a session. Right. Another one was the very first one that I ever did with the voice actor who voices Mara, because she and I wound up, we were like, after that, we were like best friends. And she and I are like dear, dear friends now from that. And then the other one is another session with Mara at the very end. And I just remember when that was done, everything just like was so quiet in the studio after. And then just like, because it was, I didn't know if there was going to be anything more, if there's going to be any, like, it was the ending of this relationship in this very powerful way. It was the ending of that season. And it was like, for me, like, I'm done with this series. And it was so emotional. It was so, like, it was just so quiet. Like, all of a sudden we hear people are like around or like crying. It was lovely. It was like a magical, magical Hollywood moment.
Oh my God. Well, if you guys haven't watched it already or like in the midst of watching but haven't finished it, highly recommend it. It's on Netflix if you guys have Netflix, so go check it out. Now, before we transition into this next character, or should I say characters, I want to tell an anecdote this time. So this game, let me preface, my favorite VR game of all time, Hard Stop. Whenever, I forget the exact date the PlayStation VR came out, but the day it came out, like a fool, I didn't pre-order it. So I'm calling all of these places for them, all sold out, except for my local Best Buy. And I'll always remember this because it's probably one of the one and only times I've ever intentionally sped somewhere. So I'm driving like a maniac to my Best Buy, get there, dead sprint through the parking lot into Best Buy. I see the far electronics aisle down there, breakneck speed. All of a sudden, toddler comes out from the aisle. And if you asked me to do this again, I could not. But this was a rare, dexterous feat of agility where I literally jumped over this kid and got into the line, and I was then the proud owner of the last PlayStation VR my local Best Buy had at the time. The reason I tell this is because it came with a demo disc full of a bunch of things being games, it showed off the hardware, but it was very much a demo. The thing about it, though, is that all of the games that I bought since then felt the same in the sense of they were amazing. VR is incredible. Don't play it too long at first or you're going to throw up. I know that from experience. But a lot of them just felt like demos. That is until I purchased off the PlayStation Store the game known only as, I'm trying to preface it because I forgot to click on the thing, known only as Moss. Now, again, before we dive deep, just give us a general overview of Moss and, any fun stories involved, anything at all.
Oh, Moss is the sweet, heroic tale of a mouse, a warrior mouse named Quill. And fun story is the guy who hired me for the hive in Destiny is the same person who brought me on board for Moss. And he's a dear friend, so he is very familiar with my son and I, and yeah, my son has known him his whole life, and bedtime story is just a very, very important part of our daily ritual. I read to him every night, and Stephen Hottie, who, by the way, is on this mug right here. Stephen Hottie is, he wanted to capture that. And so Moss is told like you're reading a book. There is actual a book that you turn the page in the game, and then we move into the world of Moss, and it's told via narrator. One thing that I do with my son is that I voice the characters as they speak while I'm reading, and so we just did the same kind of approach for that as well. And so I narrate the story and then voice all the characters within it.
And see, it's on that because during one of our preliminary video calls, you mentioned that because, like I told you, Moss is by far my favorite VR game of all time. And at first, I'm not going to say I didn't believe you, but I was kind of surprised. And so then after we were done with that video call, I remember right before work, I started replaying Moss, A, because it's Moss, but also B, I just wanted to kind of listen to it. And after you told me that, I could hear, some characters obviously were more like your voice than others, but others definitely sounded very different and unique. And so with all of these characters that you're voicing, plus being the narrator over this story, and you're having to kind of switch between these characters, often in rapid succession, is it ever hard doing so? Or is that a talent that you kind of have to acclimate yourself to?
Well, this gets a lot of credit to Polyarch because they gave me a lot of freedom to speak my preferences and guide the direction of how we would proceed. We worked out what the voices would be collectively via table reads. And the question was like, well, what would it be better for continuity to just record all of Quill and then record all of, Argus, or would, how do we do that? It's like, well, I feel like we have to find a way to really honor the storybook telling of it. So that was important to me and also to them. And so the question was like, okay, how do we do that then? Because it is tricky to jump around. So what I wound up doing is I would think about where the different voices kind of lived in my body, so to speak. Like when I spoke, where did I feel it? Where did I feel it resonate? So like Quill, I'm not going to be able to really accurately do it, but Quill would be up here. And so I would think about, that would be her point. And then a Darren would be down here. And then Argus would be down here. And so I would tap, sometimes it was I ran out of spots, shoulder, okay. And then just kind of tap all over. And that's how we went through the whole thing.
And so it definitely was, and I definitely got that vibe after, replaying it for a little bit after we got done talking, that it definitely presents itself as if you are reading it to us, and yet it's such a special game because we are also an active participant in the story. So I cannot highly recommend this game enough, guys. Obviously, yes, if you have a VR headset, it is required to play the game, but I highly recommend it if you guys have not already checked it out. Now, this next character, and the final character we're going to talk to before we move on to the next segment, is a character that I had to familiarize myself with a little bit. But I will say after doing so, a bit of a sidebar. You take one look at me, I don't think it's hard to imagine that I'm not the biggest first-person shooter fan, except for obviously Destiny. Not for any reason other than the fact that I'm not good at them. But the Call of Duty, because as a result, was a series I did not really give much stock in. However, researching these next two characters, I think I'm going to change my tone a little bit. Now, the first one I definitely want to talk about is the ultimate badass herself. I want to talk about Battery. So again, just give us a little bit of a brief overview about Battery, and then we're going to actually go on to the next character, and then we'll do the deep dive. But first, just tell us all about Battery.
Okay, so Battery is a specialist. She first appears in Call of Duty Black Ops 3, and then she also shows up in Black Ops 4, and she's also available on Call of Duty Mobile. But her story as a specialist lives in Black Ops. So she is the youngest of a family of military professionals, and she's gonna got a lot to prove, and so she definitely wears that. As you can see, she's very overt with that. And she one of the things that I loved about Battery is that she also has this, like, wait a second, which way is she going? I thought she was, but no, oh no, maybe she's not what we thought she was. So she definitely carries in that theme of, like, oh, whose side is she on anyway? But I loved inhabiting this character with this just so, like, whatever,
Well, I mean, kind of jumping on and kind of staying with the theme of badass women, you actually also voice a character a little bit more recently,
Yes.
who, I mean, is just as, if not more badass, and that, of course, is the one and only Death Angel Alice.
Yes. Death Angel Alice is like a whole other thing. This was another kind of character when I got this audition, was like, oh yeah, yes, definitely. She has a voice that is kind of like, think of like military badass meets one of the characters from Us. So it's like this kind of like whispery, but like very aggressive. So she was I was so thrilled. I was so thrilled to get that character. Yeah.
And with that voice, and with Battery as well, and
Uh-huh.
Call of Duty in general, just because I haven't played most of the games doesn't
Yeah.
mean I'm not familiar with the gameplay. I mean, it's war. You guys are, screaming left and right, bullets flying everywhere. And from a voice acting perspective, I have to assume that those VO sessions are probably a little bit more dexterity inducing and intense than maybe some others. So with that said, is there anything that you do, maybe when you know in advance, maybe not just necessarily Battery or Death Angel Alice, but when you know in advance you're going into a voice acting session that is going to be a bit more intense than some of the others, is there anything that you do to kind of prep for those, anything you do during them, and then maybe anything you do afterwards to kind of recover your voice?
Yeah, I definitely, my warm up, my prep in general is pretty extensive. I cut out sugar and milk a couple of days before. Definitely stay away from any kind of alcohol for a number of days before any sessions, just to keep the cords very limber and um, not and hydrated, keep them hydrated. And my warm up is I sing the entire um first act of Into the Woods as my as my warm
Really?
up, all the voices, and then depending on what I need, like sometimes if I need like a deeper voice, I'll find some music that goes deeper, or like I have to like get something that's like a specific kind. And if I know that it needs to be, if it's like monologues or like something long-winded, I work on songs that have a lot of require a lot of breath support. But more than in addition to that, there's a whole method of warm up called the link letter method that I subscribe to, that is very invaluable to me as well. For combative type sounds, or like the vocal sound design, like zombies and things like that, I just take, have really good breath support, and then and I just listen to my body to make sure that there's like, I'm going as far as I can without hurting myself. And then I have a ton of water and tea and like all like this loquat juice that's like this thick medicinal kind of juice that and like all like sprays of all sorts that I just kind of do in between, just to keep it all together. And then at this point, by now, it's fine. Like I'm pretty. I can do a shouting session. Maybe have a little. My voice is a little deeper, but it's
You're professional.
Learning how to do it.
You learn it all in stride, right?
Yeah, the first session that I did that was like that, I had 2 days back to back. They were 3 or 4 hours each, and my voice was shot for weeks. Oh yeah, I learned my lesson.
Well, and speaking of lessons, kind of seamless transition to our next segment. A lot of people that watch this show, Morla, obviously are here to see and meet the fantastic guests we have, one of which is sitting right before me. But a bunch of people also watch this show because they either want to get in the entertainment industry or already are and just want to know what to do next. Yeah. So I want you to keep that in mind for these next 2 questions. The first one of which being about rejection. So like I've said before, guys, rejection's part of life no matter how you look at it. However, if I were to say there is ever an industry where rejection is probably most prevalent, it would definitely be your industry, which is, of course, the entertainment industry. So, for the folks watching at home that either want to get in the entertainment industry or already are and just want to know where to go next, how would you advise them to handle rejection once it inevitably comes? Does it get any easier? Or if it doesn't, just what advice would you give them to handle rejection?
Yeah, well, first of all, in many ways, it does get easier. If I think about the first time that I auditioned for something and I got a no versus now getting a no, yeah, it's definitely easier. Of course, that varies, that changes depending on how much I want a role or how much I felt certain that I would get it or something like that. It does get somewhat easier over time. The thing about auditions, it's like going for a job interview every day. It's like putting yourself out there every time and knowing that it's a numbers game. I'm sure people have said this, given this advice or said this, but it's a numbers game, and knowing that there's a good chance that I'm going to get rejected for this, but somehow finding a way to be hopeful and still give your full self over to a character, and then also knowing that it very well may not happen. So I think for me, rejection hits differently. I there's not one type of way that rejection hits me. So I have like a tool bag of things that I go to depending on how I'm feeling about it. It can be as simple as anytime I step into the booth to record an audition, it's never not worth it. I'm always learning something. I'm always getting something from it. Mic technique, distance from mic, refining distance from mic, learning like, oh wow, I really did get some closes on that. I thought I had that mastered. Let me revisit that. So there's always something more to learn, and it's never not worth it. It's never not a learning experience if you allow it to be. So also just knowing, kind of sometimes going into it with the mind that knowing that going into it makes it, sometimes that lowers the stakes enough so it doesn't feel like you have to get it. So you're maybe more inclined to be relaxed and deliver something closer to what they're looking for. Another thing with rejection, knowing that it's like one thing that I say to myself, it's like, this is all part of the unfolding. I didn't get that because it's making room for something else that I do need, or I needed to learn a lesson. I needed to learn a lesson from that. I needed to be available for something else. And keeping, I guess, anything else with rejection,
guests have said in the past that it's not about you. It's not that you did a bad session or that your skills aren't good. It's just that they were looking for something else. Is that something you might agree with?
For sure. And that's really the hard thing to hear and believe sometimes, because it does feel so personal, but it isn't personal. It's not personal. I just got turned down for a role that I thought sure I was going to get. Like, I have known the people involved and I was like, yeah, this is great. And then I like, no problem. This role is great. No, wonderful. No worries. And I did it and I felt confident about it. And then I didn't hear anything back. And that's the other thing, you generally don't hear back. But this, I did hear back. And at first it was like, oh, how? And then I put myself in this person's position. It's like, God, that must be a really difficult job. That must be a really difficult job to have. And I can only imagine what's going on over there. And I know that has nothing to do with me personally. And then I wound up turning it into what I hope is another opportunity. Like, hey, what can you tell me about my audition that might be beneficial to me? And that was like an opportunity that I could jump on because I was in direct contact with the person. But yeah,
that's a very positive way of looking at it.
Oh, that's my mom through and through. Like, it's always a learning experience. It's always a learning experience. And it's like, and it's like, okay, yeah, sure it is. But if you allow yourself to feel it and believe that, then it does help. It does help. It does help.
Well, and speaking of experience, you definitely have a bunch of it, Morla. So for the folks watching at home that, again, either want to get in the entertainment industry or already are and just want to know where to go next, what advice would you give them? Maybe some advice that you wish you had when you first started out.
Yeah, well, what my kind of like way of getting in was like attending conferences and going to hangs and just trying to learn the names of all the audio directors from the games that I really liked, and like learn their games so that if I ever had the opportunity to talk with them, that I would be, I could talk with them about their game. And like, that's just and it's authentic. It's a genuine way of connecting with developers. And I would get that opportunity to meet with them at like the Game Developers Conference and different conferences of that, like that. But one thing that is super important that I think often gets missed is that learn who you're coming up with too. Don't just look at the people who are established. Everybody's trying to meet with them. Look around at the people who are making stuff that are just starting out as well. That's like your class, that's like your graduation class, right? Like, those are like, create with them and then grow up with them. I have people who, I remember once I was told, don't pay any mind to those people. They're just getting started and they can't help your career at all. And I was like, well, I don't care that they can't. I just like them. I think they're interesting people and I want to hear what they have to say. They're energetic and enthusiastic about things in the same way that I am. And I did. And I've worked with I'm thinking all those people. I'm like, I've worked with all of them now. And they work on the people who are at the top eventually aren't there and new people are coming up. So learn who you can grow up with.
Ooh, put that on a shirt. Alrighty, guys, if you haven't already, now is your final chance to either message Visioncon directly or put in your live chat the reviewers' comments and questions, because, ladies and gentlemen, we're in the plug zone. Morla Gorrondona, now is your opportunity to plug, promote, advertise, whatever verb you want to use. anything you want. The floor is yours.
Oh, well, I like Twitter. I'm on Twitter. I'm I'm in there. I love fan art, and I try my very best to reach out to people whenever they make comments or say something nice. I like to respond. I like to yeah, for if people are being nice, I like to be nice back. And so my Twitter is at actor_Morla. I also have Instagram, but that's mostly like my adventures in the world, which is fun. I mean, I say go take a look at it, but it's mostly just me and the things that I do in the world. So that's at Morla Vox. I also have a website. So if you want to see what other games that I've worked on, there's information about that, and that's my name, morlagorrondona.com.
And if you're watching this live on Facebook, I got all those links in the live chat. Or if you're watching this later on YouTube, going to be down there in the description box below, guys. And with that, we're going out of the plug zone and going right into our final segment, viewers' comments and questions. So like I usually do, guys, just going to do about half and half, some in the messenger and some in the live chat. So let me pull it up real quick. All right. Okay, so James tuned in and said, hey, Morla, huge fan. And on February 9th, it's my birthday. So I just wanted to say thank you for such a wonderful early birthday present.
Oh my goodness. How sweet is that? Well, happy early birthday, James.
Oh. And then, let me pull up Aaron. All right, Aaron. So he said, in honor of Bed Knobs and Broomsticks' golden anniversary this year, if you had a magic bed knob, where would you like the bed to take you? Okay, so think like a magic bed, like a magic carpet.
Mm-hmm. Okay. P.S. Bed Knobs and Broomsticks. That's one that I'll have to put on my list for my son and I to read. I'm always looking for new books. Like, oh yeah, that's a good one. Okay, so thank you for that. Where would I go? So it's like anywhere in space and time.
I think so. Well, let's go ahead and go with that.
Oh gosh. I know we were like rushed for time, so I gotta like figure where would I go? I would want to go back and be Katharine Hepburn's friend. I would like be her like assistant or just like her friend. I just want to be near her.
Yeah. Well, Chris tuned in. He said two things. First, he said, just gave you a follow, Morla, on Twitter. And then he also said, I see that you're listed as an additional voice in Star Wars The Old Republic. Who did you voice?
A long time ago. I don't know. I don't remember.
So additional voices. Correct me if I'm
it was probably
wrong.
someone with like, go over this way. You know, it was like just like kind of like a probably didn't even have a name actually. It was just like either like background in a scene, kind of like worrying about something that was going on in in that world at that time. But yeah, it was a short session.
I tuned in and said, what's your favorite Guardians of the Galaxy episode that you starred in?
Oh, it would have to be the Destroyer. Whereas Xeron, the Destroyers, where she finally arrives on the scene, and yeah, she was great. And I got to play opposite David Sobolov, who is magnificent.
Well, Tiffany tuned in and said, hey, Morla, I'm a big fan, but I kind of have an off-the-wall question. I love your hair. What products do you use?
Well, I love it. I use what is it? My colorist, her name is Melissa, and she owns a salon called Comb and Honey, and she is fantastic, and I highly recommend her. And I use like Kevin Murphy and Formula 18. Those are the ones that I usually go for. Yeah. Yeah.
We got time for about two more. Jonathan tuned in and said, What are some of the hardest voices you've ever had to do?
Hmm. Hmm. Two hardest voices. Um, I think I think the ones that are like super okay, I would say one of the hardest voices that I ever had to do was a character called May in um oh my gosh, Saints and Sinners, The Walking Dead, Saints and Sinners. It was an accent, a very specific kind of New Orleans accent. It was like from like a specific neighborhood in New Orleans kind of accent. And on top of that, it was just like open, like rip your heart open kind of hurt and agony. And it was for that, it was like maintaining the integrity of the accent while also going there fully emotionally. That was really challenging. And then I think the stock. Gosh, I hope it's the stock. I'm gonna say which character it is, but it's from The Last of Us, the
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 Stalkers.
version of zombie that I was, like it was so specific the way, like to really narrow in to the degree that I have been zombified or infected, right? So no, not too far. It's like this very niche kind of place, and dialing that in. It was very performancy. It was like, it's not just like, making zombie sounds, doing crazy screeches. It was like, it was such a artful way that they want that it was directed to be of this, like, it's like own entity, like its own special kind of degree of infected. It was challenging, but a lot of fun. A lot of
Well,
fun.
I was about to say, that leads perfectly to our final questions, because Lily tuned in and said, "Hey, Morla, I loved you as the Stalkers," and then she put in parentheses, "but was also terrified." Was that a fun role to do?
Yeah, absolutely. I like, and I love, like I said, I love this space where voiceover and sound design meet. Like, so zombie voices, like hive, creature things. Vocal sound design is such a interesting, like, never ending place of discovery, like finding like different, oh wow, I never noticed that sinus cavity way back there. Let's see how I can make it vibrate and what sound comes out. And I it's kind of a strange hobby, but there are people before me, like Mike Patton and Lisa Gerard, who just like do this amazing stuff with their headspace and voice. And it's I'm I if I did not, well, I'm not going to say that. I was going to say if I did nothing but that, I'd be happy, and that's not true. If I did half my work was that, I would be just utterly satisfied.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, that's about all the time we got for episode 51 of Visioncon Live. And before we sign off, Morla, any final thoughts to leave us on, or sage-like wisdom?
Oh my goodness. I just want to say thank you so much, Zach. You've been just remarkable and wonderful and made this whole thing a pleasure. I've had a wonderful, wonderful time. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Oh my God. Well, thank you guys so much for tuning in to VisionCon Live episode 51. I'm, of course, your host, Zach Wilson, but much more importantly, this has been my very special guest, Morla Gorrondona. Make sure to check out all the links down the description box below, and check out our friends over at the Haupt Network. And always remember, guys, that life's better when you guys have friends to share it with.